Hey, it's Rob and welcome to Axel's Garage. I wasn't planning on making a video, then I started and I said, you know what, I should make a video. And we are doing pulled pork barbecue. So we are taking a boneless pork butt, which the pork butt is a shoulder, and it's the back part of the shoulder is the part where the shoulder blade is the butt. That's just the way what they call it. They call it a butt. If you get a picnic, that's the front part of the shoulder. The back part of the shoulder is the butt. So we got a boneless butt. I actually like a bone-in butt with the bone in it, but this one just happened to be boneless. Why do I have a boneless? Because it was on sale, and that's why we bought the boneless. So all I've done so far before I decided to make the video was I started to put my my binder on, which is mustard. I'm using yellow mustard only because we had it in the refrigerator, because I don't know where the heck we got yellow. This is New York. We don't use yellow mustard in New York ever on anything. But somebody must have brought yellow mustard over with something. I think somebody might have came over with a tray of you know, the pigs in a blanket, the little mini hot dogs wrapped in a little pastry thing, and they must have brought the yellow mustard because, like I said, in New York we really don't use yellow mustard. Maybe if you have little kids, they use yellow mustard. My kids never had yellow mustard. It was always spicy brown mustard because it's New York. So I'll use spicy brown mustard as a binder as opposed to yellow mustard. It doesn't really matter. You're never tasting the mustard. It's just a binder. So I took my boneless pork butt and I took a sharp, non-serrated knife. I ran it a few times over the steel to get a good sharp point, and I came in and I scored the fat cap. That's all I did. I'll bring you in a second. I'll show you what I did. I scored the fat cap, and I just do that to help that fat cap disintegrate over the smoking and cooking process. It's real easy, this recipe. There's 1,000 million gazillion recipes on how to do pulled pork or smoked pork butt or smoked pork shoulder, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to pull it, you want to chop it, you want to chop and pull, whatever it is. Every recipe is good. Every recipe is right. There is no wrong recipe. It's like training a dog. For those of you who train dogs, there's 1,000 ways to train a dog, and most of them work and most of them are right, and you just pick the one you like. This is the way I like because it's easy. I don't even have to taste it. I know it's good, and the way I'm gonna finish this makes it a great thing to bring somewhere without drying it out and without having to cover it with sauce to make it juicy. I like to serve my pork butt pretty much naked and let people put sauce on it themselves. Now, when you pull it out of the smoker and pull it apart right then and there, it's juicy and it's servable. But what happens when you have to bring it somewhere? And that's where this one comes in. We're doing a little catering for a party that my daughter volunteered me to be the caterer, myself and the baby mama, my wife. So we've been cooking food for the last 2 or 3 days. So this needs to go in catering tins, and it needs to be warmed up and then put in a chafing dish or a sterno rack and be served to people. So there's a way I finish it that will keep it moist and juicy and not be greasy. So it starts out with scoring the fat cap, and then I'm going to use any mustard, whether it be yellow or gold, as the binder. So now I'll bring you in and I'll show you what I got. Now, I started doing this thinking that I wasn't gonna make a video, and then I said, you know what, I might as well make a video. So I already had scored the fat cap, and all I did was run the tip of the knife across, and then across this way, across the fat cap. Anywhere you have, you know, the thick portion of fat, just like that, just be careful with the sharp tip of the knife that you don't cut your finger. All right, and you put a nice score in it. It doesn't have to go all the way down to the meat. It can stay in the fat. In the middle over here, it's a pretty thick fat cap, and you can see over here it's pretty thin, so I scored it into the meat. Doesn't matter. You can run it into the meat. You could not run it into the meat. They're about 1 inch squares all the way around the fat cap, and I'm happy with that there. So now, all I did was I flipped it over and I rubbed the mustard in on the backside, and now, because this is a boneless, they kind of cut it apart to get the bone out. So you have this giant cavity where the bone will be, and this is where the flat part, the shoulder blade, or I think they call it the scapula will be. And because I can get in here, I'm gonna put a little yellow mustard and I'm gonna rub with my hand. And I didn't leave a clean hand. Let me grab a rag. so that I got a hand to grab the mustard with and a hand to rub. And I'm just gonna go around with my hand. Yeah, my hands, I washed them, they're clean. Break my chops, and I'm just gonna cover the meat with the mustard. And I am doing that. So I'm gonna put some right in my hand, and that's the doorbell. Of course, I'm filming, I'm cooking, my hands are dirty, and there's the doorbell. And I know who it is because he called me and told me he was coming, and I said, front door's open. Right? And now I just gotta do here. Hold on, let me get the door for the dummy. There's a reason why I said front door's open. I said front door's open for a reason.
All right, I wasn't just gonna walk in.
Why not? I said front door's open.
Shut up.
All right, so back to this. Now all I gotta do is the top. I told him front door's open for a reason. You have yellow mustard at your house?
What?
You have yellow mustard at your house? You have yellow mustard? What do you use yellow mustard for?
Nothing. I bought it to do ribs.
That was the only reason why you bought it, was to use it as a binder like this. You know, you can use golden mustard, spicy brown.
I just looked at my recipes.
Yeah, they say yellow mustard because everywhere else in the country they use yellow mustard. We don't use yellow mustard here. So you can get some down in those grooves here where you scored the fat cap, all right? And you got your yellow mustard or your any mustard binder on there. Next step is to give it a rub, which is our dry seasonings. Now that the dummy has left with his yellow mustard, we have it rubbed down with our binder, which is pretty much any mustard. Let's go with that. So I have a bowl of brown sugar. I usually, if I'm going out and I'm buying brown sugar to do this, I get dark brown sugar. I went on the shelf and we had light brown sugar already open. So light brown sugar it is because it doesn't matter. People get too complicated about what it is. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. I've used light, I've used dark, I've used different things. It doesn't matter. So I got a bowl about this much. If I had to guess, 2 cups. I don't know, I don't measure. All right, bowl full. Now, what am I gonna add into this as far as my spices for my rub? Salt, pepper, garlic. That's it. But if a lot people like to give me gifts of like a gift set of hot sauce, so I got, you know, granulated garlic, salt, pepper. We buy it in big containers. All right, but people also like to come and they like to give me stuff. They like to give me, you know, oh, this try this Memphis barbecue seasoning. Try this brown sugar and bourbon seasoning that you can put on steaks or whatever. Try all that stuff. Okay, yeah. You know what? I used them. You know how I used them? On my pulled pork. You know why? It doesn't matter. Just like the light and dark sugar. It doesn't matter. Every pork butt I've ever cooked, it comes out the same, no matter what I season it with. It's flavorful. You just need to add some seasonings. It's flavorful. Really, the ratio, it doesn't matter much. What I try to stay away from is salt, because most of the seasonings and stuff have salt in it. The barbecue sauce that you might put on it has salt in it. You don't need salt. So what I actually like to use is this stuff here. SAZON. And let me show you. I don't know what it is. Alright. Hopefully focus there. That's it. It's like a multi-purpose seasoning. It's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. Let's see what is this product. This perfect blend of spices will enhance flavor to any food. Sprinkle on steaks, chops, fish, soups, roast poultry, seafood, eggs, beans, salads, sofritos, vegetables, etc. Yeah. Alright. What's in it? Here you go. This is why I don't add salt to anything. What's in it? Salt, #1 ingredient. MSG, garlic, paprika, black pepper, spices, oregano, parsley, and top, TCP. TCP is an anti-caking agent, so some chemical. All right, there's your mix right there. This, it's perfect for almost everything you put in a smoker except for pastrami. Don't use it on pastrami. Pastrami matters. This really doesn't matter much. So what I will do is I'll take some of this and I am going to mix it in the brown sugar. About that much. Not as much as the brown sugar, probably about half the amount if I had to guess. And what I like to do is just get your hands in there and mix up the brown sugar with the seasoning. And the reason why I want to mix them together is because the seasoning has that anti-caking agent in it, which stops your brown sugar from clumping up. So if you have some clumps in your brown sugar, you break them up with your fingers, and the seasoning will keep them broken apart and it won't clump up, and you can get this nice and seasoned. Is the messy part. So you want to try to keep that dry hand, wet hand thing going on. And I'm going to take my butt and I'm going to flip it up to the bottom side. Now when we put this on the smoker, I'm putting fat cap up. That's what I do. A lot of people say fat cap down. I do fat cap up. It's just what I do. So now with my dry hand, I'm going to sprinkle my rub on it, and I'm going to mash up any clumps that I might have missed as I'm sprinkling it on. And then I'm just gonna like pat it in, spread it around first, and then so you sprinkle it on and then spread it around. I'm not rubbing it in because I don't want to move the mustard away. I'm sort of spreading it with a light touch, and then you pat in to that mustard. And you can see that the mustard is actually getting it to stick nice. And you pat it in nice like that, and then you try to get the sides nice. And I'm going to move the camera in so that you can see what I'm doing. So you give it a nice coating, and you can see like your rub is almost disappearing. You see how I got some dry spots here? These are eventually, it sort of like disappears. And then what I'll do is I'm going to scooch it over just a little. I'm going to take some with my dry hand, and I'm going to pop it on the side, and I'm going to sort of pat it in to the side. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to put my wet hand, and I'm going to pat it into the side. All right. I'm going to turn it. This is that open side, so I'm only really concerned with the parts that are going to stick out. So I'm going to throw some in there like that. Okay. Now that, remember, this is my bottom. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to flip it over. All right, and now I have my open side. So I'm going to flap this open like that. Oh, I got a little wet on my, and I'm going to take my dry hand, and I'm going to throw it in here. I'm going to smooth it around. Okay, and I'm going to pat it in. And you know, in there, and that like that little, for the lack of a better term, that little armpit in there, I'm going to throw some in there with the dry hand, and then with the wet hand I'm going to coat it all nice in there. And then again on the underside of this flap, and the flap is only here because this is a boneless, and they really cut it apart when they process it, because it's just easier for them to destroy the piece of meat getting the bone out, instead of being a little bit of an artist and getting the bone out. But in the meantime, all this underside that's going to flap back over, I want to get some of this rub on. So I'm going to pat it in, I'm going to pull it back over, because when I put this in the smoker, I'm going to make sure I'm nice and closed up like this. Like I want to close it up sort of like it would have been before it was cut, and you could sort of find where the meat should have been before it was cut. So now I'm up to my top side, and the same thing. I'm going to work over here on this sloppy side first, because this is all sloppy, because this is where it got cut apart. All right, and then I'll come and I'll work on the top here. All right, getting it in there nice. Work on the side, a nice coating on the side. All right, then we'll come over here, get our side coated. Then I'm going to come over here. Now this pork shoulder, or butt, it's cold right now. It was refrigerated. So what I am going to do, after I get all this on it, and I am going to put extra on top. All my excess, after I get it, is going on top. And if you want to, this is just a baking sheet. I'm not using this for anything other than to retain the mess. You can come and you can grab any extra that fell off and get it up on top like that. Now we are completely rubbed down. All right, so we are completely rubbed down with our pork. Now I've been doing smoked meats, barbecue. I bought my first smoker 18 years ago. Next month it'll be 18 years ago, and I know that because my twins were born in March and they were premature, so they were in the hospital for I don't know, I think it was several weeks. So we were going back and forth to the hospital, and on one of my wife's shifts at the hospital, I went to Home Depot and I was buying some stuff because we were redoing the house at that time, and they had a smoker on sale, and I never had a smoker, I never owned a smoker. Ate plenty of barbecue, but never did it myself, and I bought one, and that's how I know how long I've been doing this. And I used to do this and let it sit at least 24 hours before I went in the smoker. I would cover it up, put it in the refrigerator, and let it, marinate. And I did that for many years, and then I had to do a pork shoulder faster, and I didn't let it, marinate overnight or whatever, and guess what? No difference. It's almost like the seasonings you ate. There really wasn't much difference in the finished product, because I think how you finish it, the end of the cooking or the cook process, has a lot to do with it. So I don't do that anymore. What I do now is I am going to cover it. I'm not going to seal it covered. I'm just going to cover it with some wax paper. And I'm going to let it sit out on the counter for probably about 6 hours. And the only reason why it's sitting on the counter for 6 hours is just to bring it up to room temperature, so that you're not putting the cold pork shoulder into your preheated smoker that you worked hard to get to a certain temperature, and then you throw that ice cold, that giant 9-pound ice cube into the smoker, and it screws your whole temperature up. And if you don't have an electronic smoker that's automating the temperature constantly, and you got to play with your temperature, or you're using a charcoal smoker or a wood smoker or whatever it might be, now you got to play with that temperature. So I find it easier, and this marinade process will happen over the next 6 hours, that this thing is sitting here covered but out, and it's not going to go bad in 6 hours. Stop. You're not going to get bacteria and mold in 6 hours. Stop. Just let it sit covered out for 6 hours, then throw it in the smoker. You'll be happy you did that. Trust me. And we'll be back when it's time to put this in the smoker. So it's been about 6 or 8 hours, probably closer to 8, because we actually smoked a bunch of ribs, made some cornbread, we got rib tips cooking for some kind of rib tip rice dish. I'm thinking up in my head, but back to the pork. So the pork has been sitting covered on the counter for about 8 hours at room temperature. Let it get up to room temperature. Like I said, it's not going bad or anything. Okay, I just had it loosely covered with some wax paper, and that's what it looks like. All right, the brown sugar and the spices did their thing. That sugar just melts in there, and now we're going to take it over to the smoker, and we're going to put it on the smoker. When we put it on, the smoker's running at about 225 degrees. It's not over 250. I try to keep it anywhere from 215 to 225, but it's cold out, fluctuates a little bit. It's an electric smoker. What I will do now is I'm going to put a temperature probe in it, and I'm going to monitor the temperature. And it's going to take about halfway through the cook or whatever to get this to about 170, 175 degrees. Once it hits anywhere between 170 and 180, I like it at 170, but I'm not that particular. I'm going to take it out exactly the way it is. Fat cap on top, and I'm going to put it into this heavy stainless tray. Little wobbling on the camera going back there. Baby mama's getting tired. It's like midnight, and we're finally getting this thing on the smoker. We're going to take this pork shoulder, once it hits 170, we're going to put it in this right here. We're going to cover it tight with aluminum foil, and we are going to let it go for probably another 6 hours or so. So it's probably going to go 4 to 6 hours open, and then it's going to go another 4 to 6 hours covered. What we're looking for is 170 in there covered, and then what we're looking for on a final temp is a minimum of 204 and an absolute maximum of 210. So that's your window, 204 to 210. Over 210, you're killing it, but you need to hit that 204 to break it down enough so that it just falls apart when you go to pull it. If you got a bone in, which this one's not a bone in, but if you got a bone in, you hit that to 204, it's gonna come right out. So we're gonna get this on, we'll show you putting it on, and then we're gonna go through the whole cook. Once it's done, I'm just gonna pull it out once it reaches temperature, and I'm gonna let it sit for about an hour on the counter, and we'll pick up the video after it's sat for an hour. So let's go get this on the smoker. Baby mama, stay awake. She's yawning away back there. Stay awake, we're getting it on the smoker. I got the smoker warmed up. I am running some apple in my smoke box. I filled it up with wood. I filled it up as much as I could get in there, and I'm just leaving it as that. And now I'm just going to grab this, and I'm going to get it up here. I use the highest shelf I can use based on the size of the meat we're putting in. And then I'm going to take this temperature probe, and I'm going to put it right through a good thick part in the middle of the meat there. I'll slide my grate. Ooh, it is hot. Whew. Flap this over. Let me move my baking sheet there. Alright, so I'm just gonna close it up tight, and I'll take this probe and I'll run it into the, I'll bring the box out here. Like I said, 170, we'll cover it in the tin, and we'll be back with you once it's rested. And hopefully the baby mama will be a little bit more awake than I can start. Actually, it's snowing now. It's snowing now. All right. We are back in the kitchen. The pork shoulder hit 204 degrees. I didn't realize it until it was about 206. Fine. I just don't really like it over 210. It's been sitting now, covered, probably close to 2 hours. I usually go an hour, but we got a lot of stuff going on. As you can see, we're making trays of sausage and peppers. We're making a giant pot of jambalaya. We got a lot of recipes going on today. That's what happens when your daughter volunteers you to be a caterer for a day. So we got a lot going on. But take the foil off. I'll pull my thermometer out, and here is what that pork shoulder looks like. There is a lot of liquid, and it's fat renderings really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a container. I'm using a measuring cup. It really doesn't matter what you use, and it's still very warm on the bottom. So, and I am going to pour it all out. Do not discard this golden goodness, because this is the secret. This is going to be the secret to being able to put it into a catering tray or on a sterno rack and serve it later on and still have it nice and moist. Now, the fat you can peel what's ever left of the fat cap off. And I'm gonna bring you in just to show you what the fat cap is gonna look like. So here is what's left of the fat cap. It's very, very thin. There's not a ton of fat, but small bits of fat are good. So now you can use bear claws or forks, whatever you might want to use, and you're pretty much going to take one fork and hold it, and the other fork you're going to start to pull it apart, and you can see how easily this pulls. And look at the beautiful color there you got on the meat from the smoke. So all in all, it took about 6 hours to get it to that 170 stall, and that was heavy smoking the whole time. I had my hopper loaded up. I didn't reload it. I just had it loaded once. And it went about 6 hours, got to the 170. I covered it. That was during the night. I covered it up. And then it took about three and a half more hours to hit the 204. Now, here's the whiter meat in here. You can see how moist it is. Not dry at all. All right, here's the edge that would normally dry out a little bit. All right, still really juicy. All right, and that's it. 2 forks. You could use bear claws. They're real easy too. I always said I was going to buy bear claws, and I never have. I just always grab 2 forks. I think of it when I'm making a pork, not when I'm planning on making a pork. So this is the pulled pork. We're just going to pull it apart. We're going to keep going with the 2 forks. This was a 9-pound shoulder that had no bone. So it was a boneless. A bone in usually takes a little bit longer. And then when you get it to this point with the bone in, the first thing you're going to do is just grab hold of that bone, and it should just pull out clean. Like I said, here's parts with the fat cap, but even the fat cap falls apart. So we're leaving it in because little bits of fat are going to help us in this process of serving this. We're probably, it's, what time is it now? It's 11 o'clock in the morning. We're serving this approximately 7:30 tonight. So those little bits of fat are going to help us tremendously when it comes to having some nice, juicy pulled pork, you know, several hours later, if you're making it for a large crowd, like we're cooking for a decent sized crowd today. So all this food that we're making needs to be as fresh as possible, but it's so many hours later, there's no way we could cook it right before the dinner. What you want to do as you're pulling it is constantly mix it so that you can get some of the darker meat and some of the lighter meat mixed together, so that when somebody takes a forkful or a tongs, whatever you're going to use for serving, they're not just grabbing dark or just grabbing the white meat, they're grabbing a little bit of everything. If you see a big chunk, a real big chunk of fat in there that's not breaking up into little bitty pieces, you can pull that out because you don't want somebody to get a forkful of fat. But most of the fat should just break into little pieces, and it's going to disappear in the meat, and that's going to help keep your meat nice and tender. All right, so I'm completely pulled, and I'm going to take our reserved liquid, and you can see how it started to separate a little bit. So I'm just going to take a fork, I'm going to stir it back up. It's about 2 cups that's in here, 1 3/4 cups. To be exact, and I am going to pour in half the amount. So that was pretty much, we'll call it 2 cups, and I'm going to put an equal amount of apple cider vinegar in. Alright, so I got my reserved liquid, the apple cider vinegar, and now I am just going to give it a good stir. Like I said, I am not going to add any sauce to this. I like to serve my pulled pork naked, and I usually will have 3 types of sauce on the side. I'll do a sort of like a Kansas City, I call it a Kansas City, sort of like a regular bold barbecue sauce, and then I'll do a sweet sauce, and then I'll do a mustard-based tangy sauce, and I'll serve that on the I'll have that on the side. And this, with the reserved liquid in it and the apple cider vinegar, really isn't going to change the flavor too much, but it's going to keep it moist, and that's what you're looking for. You don't want it to dry out on you, so that liquid will do that trick, and that's it. It's perfect. I don't even have to taste it. I could tell it's perfect. That's and now I'm just going to put it into an aluminum catering tin, and roughly speaking, an 8 to 10 pound pork shoulder is 1 full half catering tray, which is, you know, this size, the half tray that would go in a sterno rack. So if you wanted to do a full tray with 2 half trays, you need to do 2 shoulders. 1 shoulder is, once you pull it and wet it down, it kind of condenses itself a little bit, and it's, like I said, that we started out, the pre-cook weight was about 9 pounds, but this comes out perfect every time. It's easy. It might not be the right way, but it's the way I've been doing it, and it really works out great, and it tastes great, and yet to get a complaint even from a real barbecuing Southerner. So hope you enjoy the quick recipe. Check out our other videos on Axel's Kitchen, the playlist. I'll link it right here, and thanks for watching.